Hear me now? Yes, isn't that good? Yes, the voice, the voice. Hello, everybody. My name is Philippa Whipple. I'm one of the benchers here, and I sit as a judge in the Court of Appeal. Welcome to our beautiful hall, 450 years old this year, so quite a venue for this event. We have many attending remotely as well. We're monitoring the chat on the web, on the bar on the chat space. You know what I'm trying to say. But if you have any problems, those of you following remotely, please just type in a message and we'll do what we can to restore audio or visual access. Can I say a word or two about what tonight is? It's a joint venture and a first joint venture between two Middle Temple initiatives. The first of those is Survive and Thrive, and the second is the Talent Retention Working Group. Survive and Thrive, many of you may have been to their events before, was set up by the Inn in 2016, and that group hosts talks and events which are aimed at supporting members of the Inn in different areas of their professional and personal lives, so its focus goes beyond the strictly legal. The Talent Retention Working Group, which is a group on which I sit, was set up in 2020, more recently, and its aim is to support barristers who are either returning to the bar from time out of practice or who are switching practice areas. So that group, we keep a close eye particularly on women who have taken time out to raise a family. But of course, we aim to help anyone who is returning to the bar or moving to or away from the bar, whatever their circumstances may be. As a group, we think about barristers both at the employed bar and in the self-employed barristers, because we recognize that many barristers during the course of their careers may switch between those two limbs of the bar. But listen, the ultimate aim of both of these initiatives and of so many other things that Middle Temple does is to encourage diversity, equality or equity and inclusion. It's our collective aim to retain talent and to ensure that all barristers, wherever they work, reach their full career potential. So let me turn to the business of this evening. The title of the event this evening is Improving Your Communication Skills, something we can all do. Good communication, as you all well know, it lies at the heart of good professional relationships and at the heart of strong professional development. And that's really why we want to look at this. The feature we're going to look at particularly is feedback. For all their ability with words, barristers sometimes are not very good at giving, or dare I say, receiving feedback. But if you don't give good feedback, it can be the situation that frustrations can build up, and possibly even worse, opportunities for professional development can be missed. And it's our view that that really does need to change. And that's what this evening is all about. Let me just tell you a little bit about the format. Again, it's a novelty. Let's hope it works. In a minute, I'm going to introduce our main speaker, Anna Colton, and she'll talk to you about some of the themes that we hope to draw out of this evening. We've then got 2 or 3 short scenarios, and they're going to be acted out by some brave volunteer barrister actors who I have sitting behind me. I've seen the scenarios and I think they're fantastic because they're very realistic about things that can happen in chambers particularly. So I want you to watch and to listen what goes on. It is just a mini performance, so nobody's going to take anything personally at the end of it, because at the end of each scenario, what I'm going to do is ask all of you how it landed with you. What was good? What was bad, what might have been done differently, and we'll have a discussion about it. And for those following online, if you want to type in your observations, I'll try and feed those into the discussion so that we can pull it all in together. And please remember, there's no wrong or right answers to any of this. It is just a discussion. So please don't be shy and let us know what you think, because this is a piece of collective learning. Anna's going to help me moderate your responses. And at the end of each scenario, she'll give her expert view on what we've seen and heard and learned. Our scenarios are all set in chambers, and they do involve the sorts of issues that come up the whole time. In my experience, they came up the whole time between junior and self-employed barristers. A little bit exaggerated, perhaps, just for the theatrical purposes of this evening, but certainly realistic. We have set them all in the context of civil law, but please don't think it matters what the context of the scenario is. Everything that you're going to hear and see this evening is intended to be of universal application, whatever your background and whatever your area of work. So let me introduce Anna Coulton. Anna is, and this is a quote from a very happy client of hers, a quirky mix of clinical psychologist, mindset master, and fervent cheerleader. Not bad. That's what it says on her website. And from my dealings with her, I know these things to be true. In her distant past, she was an actress and a TV presenter, but in her more recent past, and for many years now, she's been a qualified clinical psychologist. She has enormous experience of working with individual barristers to improve mindset and with chambers to improve the workplace culture. So we are extremely grateful to have Anna with us this evening. And I'm going to hand over to Anna for some introductory themes.
Thank you, Philippa. Hi, so feedback, which I'm getting right from the speaker here. So feedback is an issue, I think, that we deal with across the board now, whether it is your Trustpilot review, your restaurant review on TripAdvisor, or workplace feedback. We are in a culture where feedback is something we willingly think we can give whenever, but actually, when it is in the workplace, it needs to be considered really carefully how you give it and indeed how you receive it. And I, as Philippa said, I've worked at the bar for many, many years now with individual barristers, juniors and silks, as well as clerks and sets of chambers in general. And I realized there was a problem when I would have juniors in my room saying to me, I don't know, my leader they just seem to have stopped using me. They rewrote my entire skeleton. I spent hours on that skeleton and they rewrote it. I have no idea what I did wrong. Or they would say, I don't think they like me. They're really snippy with me. They're not so snippy with my other one. I have no idea what's going on and I don't know what to do about it. They felt they weren't good enough. They didn't understand what their leader wanted. They were expected to cancel plans. I'm sure everybody in here has probably cancelled a plan at the last minute, but that seemed to be the expectation, but non-explicit expectation. So always trying to work out what was wanted without being told. They felt expectations were often unrealistic or not, it wasn't possible to meet those expectations. And sometimes the way they were spoken to, the way they were treated felt lacking in respect or understanding. And I thought, this is extraordinary. Why is this happening? And at the same time, some of my silks or senior juniors would tell me that their juniors just weren't good enough and they weren't going to use them again. No, they weren't going to say why. It didn't really matter. They didn't have time. Just next time, someone different, please. I was particularly alarmed by that, actually, because I just feel it is wrong to do that. There was a sense of preferred, and there is a sense often of preferred leader, preferred junior. That's okay. We all have people we like working with more and people we enjoy working with less. There is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes the complaints were they can't see the wood for the trees, they keep missing their deadlines, the work is late, their judgment is poor, their style is off. So these are very consistent themes that come out in my room, irrespective of who I'm talking to. And it seemed that there was a systematic failure to give feedback after pupillage ended, which from my training, where you are watched, observed for 3 years, relentlessly, given feedback every single week without fail as a bare minimum. And it continues whether or not you're in private practice or working in the NHS. This is a radically different culture, and a culture, I think, that inhibits learning and inhibits growth and inhibits professional development. And it's really luck of the draw as to whether you work with somebody who is willing to take the little bit of time it might take to say, you see this right here. If you had done it differently, it would have been more helpful for this reason, that reason, or the other. Or indeed, for a junior to say, can you just clarify, I'm not sure what you're wanting. That's not necessarily feedback, but it's a request, and it helps your leader to understand what you need. And once they understand what you need, you have a much happier working relationship. They may give it, they may not, but at least there is an explicit communication there. And feedback should be explicit communication. Now, I am well aware, I say all of this, it is both very difficult to give and can be very difficult to receive. So I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, and it can take practice, and it is a learnt skill set, and one which I don't believe Bar School teaches. I also actually don't think that it is taught terribly well, if at all, in pupil supervisor training. You know, there is an expectation that pupils will receive feedback as part of pupillage. But I've also heard stories where even that has been piecemeal or minimal. And so after 9, 12 months, you're taken on as a tenant, and that is the end of formal teaching. It is not ideal. So that's the context for why I think feedback is so fundamentally important, and for why I think at the bar in particular, there is a problem. You know, in employed workplaces now, the appraisal is something that happens every year. More and more businesses and law firms have 360-degree appraisals, which I think, frankly, sound absolutely terrifying, where everybody is asked for feedback on everybody. It's anonymous, it's collated, but actually, in terms of understanding one's style, one's interaction, whether there are themes of difficulties that people have with you or you have with others, it is effective. As I say, I'm not sure I'd like it, but it is effective. But the annual appraisal is, again, something that everybody expects to have, but not in the bar, not at the bar. So, with that context in mind, what are the key pointers to giving effective feedback? Because whilst I totally appreciate the hierarchy of a leader to a junior, and it's much more difficult to feel that you're able to give some feedback to a leader about their style or about something you're unhappy with, it is possible. It's about how you do it, not what you say. So some pointers before I hand over to our fabulous actors here for effective feedback. It must be specific with examples where possible. So, for example, the last 2 pieces of work you gave me have been late. I do need it on time. Is there an issue? Can I help you with it? That's very specific. It's great. With written work, ideally, you'd have the piece of work in front of you, and then you would take your junior through it, or you would be taken through it. In this paragraph, I'm not clear what the point is you're trying to make. Can you help me? So you will see the writing may not be quite so clear, or stylistically, I prefer this to this style. Could you do it differently? Be clear about what is your personal preference and what is content dependent. Everybody has their own style. You can't magically know every leader's style without some help, or without being told. You know, or if it is about your client skills, I noticed in the con that you interrupted the client mid-sentence. Please don't do that. You know, that's fine. That's all totally specific feedback. What you need to avoid is where you personalize it. Your writing is poor, you lack judgment, you're woolly, you're thoughtless. No one will hear it, and people won't know what to do with it. So that is really unhelpful feedback that people can't really grow from unless they seek to clarify it. And having the confidence to seek to clarify that is quite an ask. Some people will have it, some people will just shut down and shrink away. Avoid, this is my personal thing, avoid always and never. Because the minute you put, you always do this or you never do that, people have stopped listening. They have no idea what you're asking of them, because they go, it's not always and it's not never. I did it then, or I didn't do it then, or I sometimes do it. So just avoid always and never. Try and make your feedback where possible positive and practical, so that it can be implemented, so that it's solution focused, so that there is an action that comes off it. So for example, if you've got a leader who frequently doesn't give you a deadline, it would be really helpful if you could tell me the deadline. When do you need this piece of work by? That's not necessarily specific feedback, but there is feedback mixed into that. Or, you know, sometimes there isn't a clear deadline. It would help me if you could give me a deadline. Great, easy. Or, you know, be polite and professional. When you're feeling aggravated and short of time, it's of course very easy to lose a bit of politeness and a bit of professionalism, but it pays back dividends if you can maintain it even when you're frustrated. It is much better given in a specified time. So, you know, could we speak for 10 minutes after our con, or because I just want to have a quick chat, is that okay? Then you've both set that time aside, you've agreed it, you've prepped it, you know it's there for you. Giving it in the corridor, or when you've had a you've lost your temper. These are not places for effective feedback. The kind of the good rant, it can be great to rant and to vent, but best avoided, whether you're a leader or a junior, because again, people don't tend to hear when you're mid-rant. It's just too difficult to hear. And what you want is the person you're giving feedback to, you want them to hear it, you want them to grow from it, develop, communicate better, whatever it is, do your work better, or, you know, be clearer in instructions. But the rant will prevent all of that. And finally, tact is key. I know that sounds obvious, but we do stop listening when we feel someone is rude. We shut it out. That is the norm. So tact is key, and tone. Try and be careful of tone. That's again why it's much better given face-to-face or in person. It is incredibly difficult to have tone over email or tone over WhatsApp. And I said finally, but this is my final, and it's not really feedback, but in terms of clear communication and laying the foundations for effective feedback through your career, being really clear about the expectations at the outset of working together is so helpful. You cannot underestimate how helpful it is. You know, being clear about, this is what I expect, these are the tasks I'd like to allocate, these are my deadlines, this is when I need the work, this is my personal style, and you being clear, well, that's really helpful. If you've got questions, what are your questions? What do you need? Would it be possible to give me an example of, or I've not done anything like this before? Are there some pointers? Setting it up from both sides, leader to junior, junior to leader, is invaluable and will make not only your working relationship better, but will make any feedback that needs to come later much more manageable. So with those points in mind, I'm going to hand over to our lovely actors.
I'm going to introduce you to our first team. Team number one in the blue corner is Zoe O'Sullivan, who is the Silk. She is actually really properly the Silk. And Jennifer Wright, her junior, who's going to come and sit here. The facts of this scenario will unfold. It's a sort of two-part scenario. So we've got part one and part two. At the end of part two, we will pause, and that's when I'd like you all to come in with your thoughts.
Thank you for coming to see me, Jen.
No problem.
The reason I asked you to pop down is that I've had a call from Mark, our instructing solicitor.
Yes.
As you know, we've got this injunction which we're hoping to make on Friday, and he's asked me where the skeleton and the order and witness statement are. And frankly, I don't know what to tell him. I mean, it's Tuesday, and you know, I was assuming that you'd have a draft for me by now.
Sorry, I had no idea Friday. But when you said last week, you said quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize that's what you meant. I mean, I've started. I've certainly started the skeleton, but it's taken me a while to get on top of the law. I'm not very familiar with this sort of thing.
I mean, you understand, don't you, that we have to run the drafts past our clients before we lodge them. And if we're aiming to go on Friday, we'll be looking to have the drafts, you know, in good shape by now.
I've never done one of these before. I did tell the clerks. They said it was quite straightforward, but I have to say I have been spending time on this, but I have struggled to get on top of the law. So it's taking longer than I hoped it would.
Yeah, now you mention it, the clerks did tell me that you hadn't done one of these before, but I mean, I have to say, I need you to come and ask me. If you're not sure what you need to do or when you need to do it, you need to come and talk to me, or we end up in this situation. I'm going to have to ring up Mark now and, you know, make it good.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to get in touch with you until I had something to give you.
Okay, so what have you got for me then?
Well, as I say, I've started the skeleton. You mentioned we need an order as well.
Yeah, and witness statement, working that up?
Right, well, yes, I'll certainly do that.
You haven't done it yet?
I haven't done it yet.
Okay, right. Okay, look, we're up against it now. It's going to be very embarrassing if I have to go back to the client and tell them it's next week because we're not ready. So I need you to turn this around as quickly as possible. Could you do it for tomorrow?
Yes. No, I mean, I'm in court this afternoon, but yes, I think I could. I think I could do it.
Can you have it on my desk for 9 o'clock?
Sure, if that's what you need.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks very much. So 9 sharp. Thank you. Scenario 1.
That's the end of scenario 1A, as we've called it. Do we reel now forward to the next day?
Yeah.
Sometime the next day.
Hi, Jed. Come in. Look, I appreciate that you've obviously put a lot of work into this, but I haven't been able to use it. I'm afraid this is not what I expected in terms of a commercial court application. It's just, it's too over the top. It's aggressive. The judge is going to hate it. I'm going to have to tone it right down.
So when you said that you wanted it to be punchy.
Did I? When did I say that?
I thought that's what you said on Friday. You wanted it to sort of really sort of smack the judge.
Right.
But I wasn't completely sure what you meant by that. So
Right.
I thought perhaps you would want it to be forceful.
I wanted it to be strong. I want it to be good. But what I don't want, you can't go over the top about the case. It has a danger of misleading the court if you don't, there are some weak points which we need to, I mean, I don't know why you haven't headed off. I mean, there are weak points that we discussed in con with the client last week. I mean, why have you not referred to those in the skeleton?
So usually I would take a bit more time to sort of plan this, but obviously you wanted it by 9 a.m. and
yeah,
you know, I did. I was hoping I'd have a chance to read it in the morning, but it all sort of got away from me, so I didn't have the opportunity to review it. I just really wanted to get you something.
And also noticed that there's the Smith and Jones decision in Court of Appeal last month. Are you aware of that?
No.
I mean, to be absolutely fair, it's not mission critical. It doesn't change the law, but I think it would have been, it's slightly embarrassing for I mean, I'm going to have to put this in. I can't put forward a skeleton that ignores the most recent Court of Appeal judgment on the issue. So essentially, look, it's not a lot of use to me. I'm afraid I'm just going to have to, I've basically rewritten it. So anyway, I'm sorry about your waste of time, but you know, I don't think you've really understood what it was I was asking for.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Yeah, hands up who thinks leading counsel's a total cow.
Well done. Can I just say, I thought that was absolutely marvelous. Just before we go out, Zoe, still in character, how are you feeling about the whole exchange? What are your emotions?
I'm feeling exasperated. I mean, you know, she took the job. She didn't tell me that she's having a problem. And now I'm in a situation where I'm having to do the work myself. I mean, you know, last week would have been the time to say it's no use doing it on the day when the skeleton's due and then telling me she hasn't read the law and she hasn't had time to check it over. You know, I'm pretty fed up, really. I mean, what's the point? I'm going to have to do it myself anyway and charge the clients for it.
Jenny, how are you feeling?
In character?
In character. No, in character. I'm not asking a personal question.
No, I mean, I think it's much the same. It's very, yeah, I'd feel really disappointed in myself, but perhaps also not completely clear where I'd gone wrong.
Okay. So can we ask, there is a roving mic, I think, that's going to be going round. If we could do that, would I be interested in, Anna, you pitch in at any moment when you think,
Yes, yeah.
I would like to know how that fell with the audience. So let's just, how did it go? Was it good? Was it bad? Who could have handled things differently? Or was it all just an immaculate piece of feedback and management? What do you think? Somebody there, yes, somebody there in the middle, that gentleman.
I'll ask you to turn the mics off for the duration of this. Please. Okay, so,
Including me.
yes, including you. So
Stand up? Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I regret not bringing some popcorn. That was that was good. Pretty brutal, I must say. An unenviable position on your part. But yeah, I'd say for the most part, I feel like, I mean, really could have been, like if I was in that position, I would have thought my pupil supervisor could have made clearer or like given a hint about, oh, by the way, this new case was decided recently in the Court of Appeal. This might be useful. That's just my initial thought about it, but yeah.
So you'd say, sorry, more information needed from the leader, so she could have helped a bit more. Yeah. Okay. Any other? Let's have some other thoughts. How did you go? I'm going to come over to you here. No, you can do it.
I just think that if there was a email reminder, it could have been a little bit more touch base with your junior, and it wouldn't be so intrusive. From you, the leader, or someone else, like, I don't know who else is in the chambers, to just say, this is a reminder that in 2 days or in 48 hours, you need to do this and it should include this, just like something that they could follow. So it's, I just think when you're working with someone to accommodate both parties, we can try and help each other.
Hi. So yes, I think that the junior barrister was a bit shy, and I do think that she should have asked, and you know, any help, especially with the law. Yeah. So in this, I would go with the KC.
I love it. This is what we want, is a little bit of dissent. I'm going to the back of the room now.
Well, what I would say is that the job of a leader isn't just to stand at the front, but actually to lead in the case. And the character of the leader here is just criticizing, hasn't taken initiative to get the junior to do the job she needed. And I think that is one of the worst aspects of leading. The junior was, I thought, the character, of course, was also missing the point, and frankly should have said, well, actually, I need your guidance. You're leading this case. So you tell me what you need. And it seemed to me neither of those attitudes that I've mentioned was apparent from that interchange.
Coming over here. I'm doing all my, this is ridiculous. Here we go.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everyone. What people are saying. Having come from a corporate setting, what I've seen here is quite similar, and it, because I'm an assistant, what it boils down to is the relationship between a leader and a junior. So from this, you can tell there isn't an open relationship where the junior can go to the KC and say, look, I'm having problems. Could you give me more guidance? Because I've been in a similar situation. All it takes is, look, I don't understand from the beginning. And even if the leader is annoyed, they'd rather you come to them earlier and be annoyed earlier. So eventually you reach the deadline on time, and keeping them in the loop, I find is really helpful.
Thank you. I've got one more over here, I think, and then I'm going to come to you, Anna.
Firstly, I would say, thankfully, I didn't go into the corporate world. I'm a family practitioner. But I was worried about the tone in which the KC spoke to the people. It was very condescending, and it was almost as if like she was set up to fail. She should have picked up that there were some confidence issues and could have given some guidance at the outset and made sure that everything was clear to her before sending her off onto the task. I feel like the poor pupil was being set up to fail. It doesn't really help anybody at the end of the day.
all I had to do was just been a bit nicer, couldn't I? You know, just try to ascertain in non-judgmental terms why she was having issues before laying into her. It's interesting you think she's a pupil. She's not a pupil. She's actually a fully fledged barrister who's being paid to do this job. That is important. So, I mean, feedback to pupils is another issue, but yeah.
I think perhaps just to build on that, it is incumbent on both parties. You won't always have an easy leader, but yes, it's about clearly setting out. But if you don't get that, you're obliged to ask.
Let me just feed in some comments from the remote sphere. Maria says onus should have been on junior barristers to take responsibility, and she should have sought additional support. But the senior should have reached out. Well, no, senior might have looked like a micromanager. So that sentiment is juniors need to look after themselves. Joscady says supervisors should have taken time to find out what the pupil was struggling with. Morphia says in the initial meeting, the pupil gave an indication on more than one occasion that she wasn't familiar with the law, and that should have been picked up. And Shirley says junior seems intimidated, which is preventing her from asking for clarification on a variety of issues and so on. Can we go over to you, Anna? What was your take on that, and how might we have made things a little bit better?
Yes, I'm not switching on yet, am I? I think you've all picked up on most of what I was going to say. There did seem to be a complete failure in the setup at the outset of this piece of work on both parts. I do think both leader and junior do have to take some responsibility. You cannot expect your leader to give you everything on a plate. They can't know what you know. They don't necessarily remember what the clerk has told them. If the clerk has said she's never done this injunction before, they don't necessarily remember. So it is incumbent upon both to set up the best case scenario for a successful piece of work. And I have the impression that didn't happen on either party. It is important as a junior to be able to say, actually, I've never done this before. Could you give me some pointers, please? Is there anywhere I should look? And that is, it feels risky in the moment, I think, but it is actually in the long term, or even in the medium term, much less risky than getting into this scenario. Likewise, saying, actually, my hours are limited this weekend. You might be better off to find somebody else. This is what is available to me. Again, it just sets up the expectation. And personally watching it, it was great, but it was excruciating. And then the way you delivered your feedback was quite brutal, wasn't it? It was kind of, as you say, unempathic. Ah, yes. Yeah. But it would have been more helpful to say, can you give me an understanding of what's gone wrong here? Because something has gone wrong. And it would be useful to me to know where that is. Although I also understand in the moment, you just need the work done. And so taking a long time to kind of mentor or discover what has already happened when you're still going to have to do the piece of work is tricky.
Remember also that the leader is, in this scenario, under pressure from her client and her lay client, you know, the solicitor, and she's embarrassed because she's looking bad. And she's probably not behaving so well because she feels like she's conscious that she should have done more, and she looks like an idiot. And so she's probably taking it out on her unfortunate junior. Yeah.
And although the junior may well have picked up that next time they might need to do things differently, actually, if the leader was able to say, you know, it would be much more helpful if you'd just come to me and said you didn't know the law, you weren't sure where to look, you hadn't done this before, and your time was short. So that would have been the specific feedback that wouldn't have changed the situation, but would have been a helpful learning point, rather than our poor junior just leaving going, oh my God, that was the worst experience ever, and I am never going to work with her again, which was a very possible outcome.
Yes.
Radio mic's back on.
That down and
That's okay. Right, we now have a new team. We have a new team with microphones quickly being exchanged to ensure that you don't get vile this sort of electronic feedback in your ears.
Hello.
Yeah, it's good.
Hello.
Yep.
Fine. Good.
So here we have Piers Presdy as leader in a scenario with Juliet Levy as his junior.
Good. Is it on? Am I on? Yeah. Good.
Behind every successful silk is a diligent, always available, and above all, uncomplaining junior. And that is Juliet, my junior of choice. She loves working with me, knows that exposes her to the very best solicitors, gives her experience of the most challenging and rewarding cases, shows her, if I may say so modestly, how a silk at the very top of their game operates, inevitably increases her chances of getting those 2 extra initials in due course. She doesn't mind my dumping work on her at short notice, not a bit of it. She knows that comes with the role. And she absolutely gets why when I get a draft skeleton, I amend, well, let's be frank, actually rewrite them and just send them in. She gets that it's all about the client, about succeeding for the client, about providing that silky quality that they're paying for handsomely. And that time almost always is of the essence. And I love that she doesn't expect feedback on her work. She knows that I'm not there to teach. I am there to deliver. And deliver we do.
I'm an ambitious, hard-working junior. I understand the pecking order at the bar and that to get those big cases, you need to have the leaders to junior. I know that the junior world is fiercely competitive. They took on 3 tenants in chambers in my intake and we're all hungry for the work. I hoped that by being ready, willing and able to work hard for Piers, that I could start establishing myself as a good junior. But after 4 cases with him, I have to find a way of communicating my frustration and dismay at his behavior towards me. On many occasions, he brings me in at the last minute, gives me an instruction to do a skeleton at 4 p.m. on a Friday for his review first thing the following Monday, assumes I have no life of my own. And on top of that, he then completely rewrites my work, gives me no feedback, doesn't even have the courtesy to tell me. I often discover it for myself when the clerks circulate the arguments to us after exchange. I have to change this cycle now, or I fear it will never change. I will just explode one day and I will lose the opportunity to work with him or any other silk in chambers.
This case has gone on forever. Funny to think that when we started it, Chelsea were reigning Champions League winners. And here we are, 2 years on, Friday tea time, big weekend at the bridge ahead, stressful weekend at the bridge ahead, a real relegation 6-pointer. I'll be out of action until late Sunday afternoon, and our skeleton is due in Monday morning at 11 a.m. But that's all right. Juliet will find the time. Juliet always finds the time. I'll email her now. Jay, no time to speak. Skeleton needs to be with solicitor and client for approval 9 a.m. Monday. Need your draft by 5 p.m. Sunday. Latest. P. That's that then. Just one thing, one very important thing I need to get done before I leave chambers today.
I got your email, Piers. Can we speak?
Well, I was actually just about to leave, dinner in hall, need to get ready. I'm very busy, you know.
This isn't going to take too long.
Oh, go on then. I'm listening.
It's just something I've been meaning to say for a long time, a very long time, in fact.
Yes?
It's just, I feel I've got to speak to you now about how we work or in reality don't work, because it may be working for you, but it's not working for me.
Phew.
Phew, as in you're pleased that I finally raised this.
No, phew. It's what you get when you complete Wordle in your last go.
Pierce, you're not listening. I'm sure you remember those junior days at the bar and where you were hardworking, ambitious, and reliable like me. I love the cases we do together, but I'm afraid I cannot go on working with you unless we rebalance our working framework. Like you, I have a social and family life and look forward to my weekends and recharging with non-work activities. It's my mother's birthday this weekend, and she's terminally ill. This will be my last opportunity to celebrate with her. You know that I told you she was terminally ill last year when we worked on that civil fraud case together, and I had to rush home after court without going for a drink with you and the solicitors after we got that killer freezing order inter partes. If you had told me Wednesday or Thursday, I could have done the skeleton for you, but I simply can't assist you this weekend. I also wonder, what's the point sometimes? You rewrite my work anyway for me. You never give me any feedback, and I don't even know when you've changed my skeletons. I'm not suggesting that you're doing any of this on purpose, and no doubt this is behavior that's modeled on how you were treated as a junior at the bar. But times have changed, and there's a much more honest and transparent approach about healthy working practices and well-being. I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I have the following proposals for you. You give me at least a week's notice of work you need from me, if you can. When I've completed the work, we have a Zoom or chat in chambers and we go through what you need changing and why. I produce a further draft based on our chat. How does that sound? Even the best can learn something from time to time. But anyway, Pierce, don't worry about the skelly. I talked to Jim, who's very understanding about my mother. He'll pull in Robert on this occasion to help, and I'll attend the application with you on Friday. I really hope you agree with my plan and proposals. However, if you have some other ideas, I'm happy to work through them.
Right. Well, that rather told me. Good points, well made. In fact, very well made. And of course, you should spend time with your mother this weekend on her birthday. But it looks like I need to be rethinking and indeed changing the way I do things. Now, you will know that pressure of time and client's instruction won't always allow for what you suggest. But subject to that, point 1, agreed. Point 2, agreed. Point 3, yes, unless we decide during our Zoom or chat that it would work better for me to do the final draft. And Juliet, thank you. You're quite the advocate.
Very good. Juliet, can I ask you in character, how do you feel about that? You've been having a difficult time with this leader. How do you feel now you've had the conversation?
I'm absolutely relieved.
Yeah.
I was dreading having this conversation. I really want the work. I want to continue working with him, but I've been tormented over this for weeks. So I'm really, really relieved. So it's gone the best I could have hoped for.
Good. And Piers, how about you? I mean, you were very gracious towards the end, but in your heart, I mean, how are you feeling about what came across to you? And I've got one specific question for you, which is, are you going to invite Juliet to be your junior again, or are you thinking something else?
Oh, no, I'd invite her to be my junior again.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, anybody who's actually got the wherewithal to look you in the eye and say that to you. I mean, we always say, don't we, that the most important thing that a barrister should have is courage and fearlessness. So, you know.
So actually, you're pretty impressed. In fact, it's been quite a good thing for you, is it, that she's stood up to you and she's expressed herself nicely and so on. Okay.
Can I just say for the record, this is the role I'm playing is the complete antithesis of the silk I am.
Don't say that. Don't ruin it. All right. Should we do a similar exercise? And I'll throw that out to people just to give me some feedback. We're going to do it a bit differently now, I think, because the microphone thing was a bit clunky. So if you wouldn't mind just saying to me, I'll keep my mic on, and then just repeat it for people who are watching online, in summary, what you've said. I'd love to hear from you. Yes, Amy.
I felt that it didn't need to be an excuse of the magnitude that this barrister had. You should be able to say to a leader, I have an unbreakable commitment this weekend, I'm not going to be able to do it, without feeling that you've got to have something so severe going on.
Okay, so
And I worry that people feel they have to have something good enough.
absolutely, absolutely fair point, that the excuse that was given was the terminally ill mother, which is very difficult in the face of that for anybody to do anything other than say, oh, well, that's fine. But the reality of life, as you and I know, is that sometimes the excuses aren't quite so dramatic as that. And it may just be that you have commitments elsewhere. They're still very important, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, yes, you, again.
As well, because I'd like the paper trail to say that yes, we agreed to this and this is going to happen, and then follow up 3-6 months time and see if it's working or not.
Right. So you'd like a more formal agreement about ways of working between this pair. How realistic is that, Piers? Are you prepared to go into writing on this deal you've just brokered with your junior? Is that a realistic expectation in Chambers context?
I suppose it's about the way you work with each other. Try to step out of character for a moment.
Yes, 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 of course you can. And I don't know if your microphone's on actually, so do you want to have a fiddle with it?
I have no idea.
That's it, you're on, you're on.
I'm good, okay. I mean, when I lead somebody, and usually actually I work without a junior, but when I lead somebody, I always have the conversation at the start when we come together and we discuss the roles that we have. And usually that's enough, and there's sufficient clarity and precision in that. But I think if there was any doubt of it, I would put it in an email.
Okay, just to follow up and clarify that. Good suggestion. Thank you very much. Yes, you, sir.
Often send through short emails, like I saw in the scenario here, do this, done by somebody. And I think that I've had that in the past where a boss has just said, this is it, do it. And obviously they've had years of experience doing that thing, and that's a very easy thing to write. I think when you're junior, it's quite difficult to respond to that in the way that you'd like to. So you might want to write a big long piece about how this is quite difficult because of this and this. But because that short form message has come through without sort of the supporting conversation first, it can be quite difficult to outline your concerns there, and maybe that's just lack of confidence, but I don't know if that makes sense.
It certainly does make sense, because I think that the quick jiffy email is very much a feature of the workplace, isn't it? And they can sound a bit curt sometimes. I mean, I don't know what you thought about Piers' email, but it's a bit sort of, I've just dashed this off, which indeed you had on your way to Stamford Bridge or wherever you were going. What I think, speaking for a leader, what you absolutely don't want back is a great long tract, because you haven't got time to read it. And I would say the perfect handling there would be to go and see the person, knock on that door and say, can I have a word? But it may not be possible to do that.
No?
Yes,
oh, yes, there we are. Yes, I do completely agree. I mean, I think there were some really good points that came out of that, like your list of what you wanted doing, but ideally, you don't wait until you are so pushed that you have a kind of emotional monologue that comes out first. You got very lucky with your leader in that scenario, who was extremely gracious, listened to it, heard it all. But actually, if that was your fourth case, ideally you would have started this conversation somewhere in case 1 or at the end of case 1, not waited till you were overwhelmed in case 4 and your mother was dying, because absolutely, we shouldn't need that magnitude of an excuse to say, actually, I don't want to work at this pace with this level of demand repeatedly. As a one-off, it may be fine, but this is not the way I want to work. Excuse me. So your proposed solutions were great. You know, you thought it through. You didn't just go and dump and expect him to come up with the solutions. You had something very solution focused at the end there. And you were lucky that your leader was still listening. Because it is certainly possible that when you just nabbed him, can we just have a moment when he's trying to rush off to dinner in hall, he would have stopped listening before you'd got there. So I think there were some great bits about that. You know, it was polite, it was very clear, but I think, you know, you had many cases prior where it would have been good to just start it, and it wouldn't all have then come in one go. You could have built up and built up and built up. You know, that was much better. Thank you very much. You know, this way of working was way better than case 1. At the end of case 1, could we now tweak this? Or, you know, would have been a much more iterative process than than what's going to feel like a pretty radical change to your working relationship.
Great. Any other thoughts on that one? Yes, you, Madam.
I would like to add that she described herself as being hardworking, and she seems to be quite responsible with her work. And in my view is that she actually needed that horrible excuse with her mother being ill in order to get her courage out and say it out loud and overcome her need to be responsible and do the job. Whereas the KC, he seemed to be very complacent with the situation. He was watching the football, and so he wasn't actually, he was relying that she will do her job in this case.
Yeah, and a very good point, so that she had been pushed to a point. She's a hard worker, and it took quite a lot for her to step out of that hard work model with a KC who takes a slightly more lackadaisical approach to his obligations, perhaps. Have you got anything to say on that one?
Yes,
Anna?
I was actually just thinking, like, I don't know how you have been in the past, but I wondered whether you had acknowledged her hard work over the last 4 cases, because also it can, one of the things about feedback is it does not just have to be negative. Really, it doesn't. Giving some, I really enjoyed working with you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that you've worked through the weekend. I appreciate the hard work you've put into this. I really liked your style on this. Those things not only put kind of goodwill in the bank, so to speak, but it means that you don't need to tell him. He knows, and you have a shared understanding. So I think, along the way, some positive feedback, going both ways is really beneficial.
Indeed. And I think it's sometimes said, isn't it, that if you give the good feedback early, it gives you a platform then for subsequent conversations.
Absolutely.
A bit like what you're saying, that if you have once you've had that first difficult conversation, the next ones are much easier to pick up on. You know what I was saying to you last time we spoke? Can I just pick that up again? So you do make life more, I think, harder for yourself the longer you leave it, in a way, and you get into the Juliet state of getting more and more anxious about it. My impression was Juliet had lost sleep over this. She was so worried about it, when an earlier intervention might have been a better thing to do. Is that fair, Juliet?
Because ideally it should be an iterative process. If you're working with someone regularly, that you go backwards and forwards, as though just checking in, was it different this time? Did it feel better? Yes, actually it was great. I like this, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing too that I forgot to say, just generally with feedback is to avoid, excuse my language, the shit sandwich, as it is called in the trade. It's good to start with something positive. I like the way you do X, Y, Z, and then deliver whatever it is that you would like improved. Don't finish with something positive, because the thing you want improved will be lost if it is the sandwich filling.
Has everybody got that? No shit sandwiches. We all understand that. It is. I mean, that is what the trade says.
It is what the trade says.
Important.
No shit sandwiches.
If you've got bad news, you've got to give it, and
you've got to give
right
it.
there.
You can start with the positive. You can carry on to what you want changed, or to the bad news, but it must stop at the end of the bad news. An open shit sandwich is fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for that clarification. Any more thoughts? Any more contributions? Yes, you, madam.
I thought it was really quite sad. At the very beginning, you were giving her some compliments about how well she worked and how reliable she is, but you could see on her face that she didn't appreciate any of what you were saying, because the frustration had built up so much.
Yeah.
She didn't appreciate one word that you said about her positive work, and I think that's possible, that can happen. You build up so much frustration that that's just like over your head.
Yeah. So all that good stuff that was coming, that good juju, wasn't really landing in the right place at all because of what had happened before. Did I see a hand up at the back here? Yes, you, sir.
First scenario actually seems to be that both are very stranger. They talk to each other. At that point, can senior register give her and candidate that she doesn't know that the how to work with her, whether she can even any like the process of it. And my question is that in our practical life in the future, what do we do with senior? Which part actually will face? First scenario or second scenario? Like second one is more helpful.
Okay, so the question or the observation is that the failure in the first scenario, as you saw it, was to give a template or better information. So the leader, let's assume Zoe actually knew quite a lot of what needed to be disclosed to her junior, but she just hadn't bothered to give her the help that was readily there. And I think that's a point that we've covered already. It would have been much better if Zoe had done that. But the second question is, which is more realistic? The first scenario of, strangers working uncooperatively, or second scenario, which is a much more constructive dialogue really between you, possibly too late in the day. I don't think it's really, I mean, I have my own sense of what life used to be like, but I've been out of the bar for quite a long time now. I would say all those scenarios have some truth in them, perhaps not as extreme as they were portrayed here, but you must be ready for these things. They happen, don't they, Adrian? They just, these things do happen. I don't know if anybody up here wants to contribute on that.
Just say that there is really should have discussed, which is not being afraid of giving ironic, we make our living out of conflict, and yet we're terrible at confronting it ourselves.
Well, do you make your living out of conflict? It's a very very scripted way of doing conflict, and it's not usually your own.
Exactly.
And one's own conflict is a very different thing, and one's own emotions are a very different thing. And that's why I said at the beginning, it really does take practice. It takes loads and loads of practice. And there is no training, as I understand, at the bar. And so it's quite difficult just to launch in and do it if you don't come from a background where it is something done.
So can you give us any, I've got a couple of comments that have come in online, but just picking up on that, just can you talk us through that feeling that I suspect is very familiar for all of us when you know something needs to be said, but you don't really want to go there?
Well, it's the rising anxiety, isn't it?
So how practically, if you know a conversation needs to be had, either way, leader, junior, colleague in chambers, whatever, work colleague, how would you prepare yourself for that?
Take some time to think through what it is that you really want out of the conversation. Not necessarily all your frustrations. Your frustrations will guide you to knowing what you want to ask for, potentially, or knowing what you want to say. You don't necessarily need to share your frustrations. You can just say, I find it tricky when X happens, or even not. You can just say, would it be possible to have a chat? And, going forward, is there any chance that you could be a bit more transparent about, or that you could be really clear in the tasks that you want done? Because I'm not always sure I'm clear on that, and I find it very difficult. So you can take some of the responsibility on yourself if you really find it tricky to give the feedback by saying, I have this issue, which is that I find it hard to know what you want, for example, and could you help me with that? And that is sometimes a more comfortable way. We also tend to do what we call in the psychology field, mind reading. We assume we know what the other person is thinking. And usually when we assume we know what the other person is thinking, they are thinking negatively of us. It's very rare that we think, oh yes, they think I'm absolutely marvelous and they are just sitting waiting for the blessing of my feedback. We don't think that. We do think we know what other people are thinking, and we do think other people are thinking about us rather more than they realistically are. So those are the things to bear in mind when you go into these conversations, because your life is very busy. Everybody's life is very busy. There's a huge amount of juggling that goes on. And most people are not being malicious or malevolent. They just may not have great people skills, or they may not have understood how to communicate with you. We all give and receive information differently. There is no one fixed style. And I think that's what makes the bar particularly difficult, because every leader will have their own style, not only of skeleton and note and cross-examination, but also of communication. And every junior will have their own style. And as a junior, what you're being asked to do when you're working with a leader is adapt yourself to their style. But you will need some help in that. And so I think it's fine to ask for some help in that. And sometimes that can be a useful way in as well. I realize I've probably given you a much more long-winded answer to your question than you want.
No, that's very helpful. Can I pick up what I think is a fantastically useful nugget that came from that, which is don't make assumptions about what the other person's thinking. Just go in with a blank canvas with no assumption. We tend to assume that they think bad of us and we have dark thoughts. And I think the better discipline is just to wipe that away. No assumptions. and be nice and clear.
Yeah.
Is it, if you're anxious about it, I'm thinking particularly about the junior to leader, because that's the hardest way around, really, isn't it?
It is, although
it
many
worth-
leaders will sit in my room and tell me they can't bear
Okay.
it and they hate seeing they don't know what to do. What happens if their junior gets upset or angry? How do they deal with that emotion? And we have so yes, you're right. I do think you're right, but I think we underestimate how
Okay.
difficult it can be the other way around.
Is it worth gaming it or going through it or role playing it with a colleague,
Always.
a friend, somebody else, just so you try and get your language right? You get that key phrase, the thing that
key
you
phrase.
want to tackle.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. And hold on to remembering what it is you would like as the outcome.
Yes. What is it you want to achieve
What is it?
from this?
What do you want them to do differently? Hold on to that so you know to ask for it.
Yes.
Hi, yes, I'd like to ask because I worked in tech for some time and what I realized in startups is tend to have agile management. So my question is, does the law profession in the UK actually adopt such a management style? Because I find that very helpful because like in the second scenario, it was more of an open door policy, but with an agile management, it's not necessarily a micromanagement thing, but every day we have like 5 minutes meeting with the leaders and to explain what blockers we have. And the leaders essentially try to help and the following day follow up on the blockers.
I think I can guarantee that the bar has not got to agile management quite yet, right? So people might be doing it unwittingly, but I mean, that's just not, in my experience, how people at the bar would work, because you've got a collection of self-employed people. One of the things I do with my clerk, I have somebody work for me, we check in every morning. I mean, you can choose to do that and have a sort of check-in, what's going on today and da-da-da-da-da. But in terms of the structure that you're talking about around managing projects, I don't know what other people's experience is, but that is not my experience. Can I just feed in a couple of comments from online and then we'll bring this to an end. Genevieve online, hello Genevieve, says that she liked Juliet's feedback because it was a company with a practical alternative. So you gave some really solid suggestions, and I think that's true in human nature. It's much easier to focus on real things than sort of conceptual complaints. So that's a good tip if you need to pick up on these conversations. And then from Calvin, he felt that Juliet was entitled to be exasperated because her silk wasn't really listening to what she was trying to say, but at the same time, her demeanor tended to suggest that she didn't really expect her senior to listen anyway. So talking about non-verbal cues, that you were giving each other non-verbal cues. So perhaps that's a wider lesson, just to watch your body language and be clear about what you might be signaling by the way you carry yourself.
About 70% of our communication is non-verbal or indirect. So
good.
Yes, it's an incredibly high percentage. You know, we can say one thing, but if we're looking over there or we're actually the communication is the words are not the thing you're going to take away. It's the stance or the look or the huff or the tone.
So it's eye contact and just moderate your voice.
Yeah.
Keep calm, really. Not anything else.
And go in with the expectation, if you can, that what you're asking for is reasonable and that it will be received reasonably. So if you go in expecting that, your demeanor will automatically shift to a less confrontational one and a more amelioratory one, which is what you want.
Great. Now, I think what I might do is bring this to a gentle close. I was going to ask Anna, just if you wouldn't mind doing a sort of wrap up of top tips, top themes that you think we might have come across.
Of course. I made some notes actually, so I will find them because
we'll just give a few more minutes and then we'll wrap up and go on to reception.
I mean, the top tips, which I will now lose in my sheaf of papers, are
feedback is really important. It's just a form of communication. And I think we forget that. It's a conversation. Ideally, it's a conversation. And that is how you can view it. It really helps us communicate with one another. It helps us understand how the other person operates, what they find helpful, what they don't find helpful. If you view it in that way, it becomes an awful lot less scary and an awful lot less overwhelming. So do think of it as communication, think of it as learning, think of it as opportunity if you possibly can. And when you come to receive it, Ideally, it won't be delivered as a personal attack, but try to depersonalize it and to think, how do I implement this? What can I do? It is really easy to feel confronted when receiving feedback, but it's a skill to learn to receive it well as to give it well. When you're giving it, keep it clear, concise, confident, solution focused. That's what Juliet, you know, after your monologue, that is what you did. You presented a number of solutions that would help you. That is the best kind of feedback that anyone can give, because then you have a conversation. If someone can't give you those solutions, okay, but there's your conversation and you can work out together. You can talk together. And if you can view it as a conversation, then that is the best way too. So those are the kind of things to hold on to. Clear, concise, solution focused being the top ones, and go in expecting it to be a helpful conversation and not something that could, you know, destroy your career or hinder your chances.
Indeed. Thank you. Right. What I would like to do then is, before inviting you all next door, we're going to have drinks next door in the Parliament chamber, but I have a few thank yous. The first and most important of those goes to Anna, who has been simply wonderful. So could you show your appreciation, please, to Anna? Thank you very much. Anna, we have a little token for you.
Thank you.
A Middle Temple token for you. It's more than just a bag, but there you go. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I think Anna's been marvellous. I think it's been, I hope you think it's been helpful. Can I thank our scenario drafters and our actors, who were marvellous. Can I thank Middle Temple for hosting? Gabriel has been such a help in organising all of this. He supports the working group beautifully. I want to thank the Survive and Thrive team and also the Talent Retention Working Group. They're a marvellous group of people, and I am always impressed by the stimulating ideas and the desire to make the bar and the legal world a better place. So thank you to all of them. And also I say thank you to Gatehouse Law and Cerulean. Do I pronounce it right? Cerulean, who have sponsored this evening's event. So huge thank yous to them. Thank you. And I've got a couple of parish notices just to conclude with. The irony of this is not lost on anybody. Please, can we have your feedback? There's some forms here. If you could just scribble a few notes, it really would help us. Let me just tell you why. We're thinking about doing some other sessions a bit like this. So what we want to know is, was this helpful? We're thinking about looking at the way in which barristers and clerks interact. It's always a little bit of a sensitive area in chambers. So please just tell us what you think. If it wasn't helpful, say so. If it was helpful, say so. We have broad backs, we can cope with anything. I've been asked to plug the next Survive and Thrive, which is on the 16th of November in this hall, on the subject of, I've forgotten to write. Leadership, pretty closely allied to what we're talking about. 16th of November, I will certainly try and come, and I would encourage anybody, any of you, to come if possibly you can. Can you think about, this is one particularly for returners and movers, anyone who wants to get back into advocacy, who's had a little bit of a break time, think about doing some work with Advocate. You've got a flyer, I think, on your chairs. It used to be known as the Bar Pro Bono Unit, and they are a simply fantastic charity that help people who need advocates, but for whom there is no government or state funding available. So it's a really fantastic charity. Please think about doing some work for them if you can, and it will help anybody get back into the business if they've been out of it for a while. And then last is the really important announcement that I've already given you, because drinks will be in the Parliament chamber just next door. Please do stay. We'd love to carry on the conversation next door, and we'd love to meet you in a less formal setting and have a chance just to have a chat next door. I'm sorry the people online won't be with us for drinks, but thank you very much for following us remotely. Thank you all.